Thank you, Steve and Holly, for loaning me to us for the evening. Glad to see you here. Well, you're in for, I'll tell you, this story you're about to hear, this marriage story, man and wife, it's a forgiveness story. In real life, humans, forgiveness. We know the Lord, our Savior's forgiveness. We know that, we believe that. Anybody agree it's a little tougher for us to do? I know probably everybody, all the married couples that are here tonight, probably all have perfect marriages, I'm sure. I know if Jesus is in the center of it, it probably is pretty close to perfect. I doubt what you get perfect. He's the answer. I know, maybe I'm preaching to the choir. But think about this as you think of this story. You know, there's a lot of marriages that look good on the outside and they're common on the inside. Maybe not yours. How's your son and his wife doing? How's your daughter and her husband doing? They're looking to you. And maybe one day they'll need this story that you're all going to hear tonight. Maybe you'll need it. Hopefully I won't, because I've been through it. You men know that story. But, so anyway, I would like to invite up our speakers tonight, Chip and Amber Anderson. Brother Greg is going to be interviewing them. He lived through the story. You'll hear that tonight. So he's going to be a good interviewer. He lived it. He was there. He knew it. But it's a great story, and I just ask the Holy Spirit to touch you like no one else can, in a way that no one else can. So here we go.
Jim. Good evening, everyone. Amen. And yes, I must tell you that I'm just beautiful window dressing up here. These folks have the story. And full disclosure, I am in love with Chip's sister, and we're married, which is good, right? She's right here. Just to clear that up. That was concerned about that. My wife John and I have been married for a long time, and you know, you see Chip and Amber up here. What an amazing, beautiful couple, and they've got an amazing story to tell. And as Jim indicated, you know, while the challenges in your home may not be the same as they face, maybe they are. But the story of redemption and the story of how God can intervene and the story of forgiveness, those principles always ring true. I'm so grateful for Chip and Amber. They're gonna tell you how it was, and they're gonna tell you how it is. And God's been through it the whole way through. So let's meet our contestants. Chip and Amber, I think before we get in, you have been married 29 years? Yeah, 29. And so let's let these folks get to know you for a little bit, and maybe just individually take us through your life just up till that wedding day. And since you've been married just about 3 decades, I think that we will take it a decade at a time and just say, what was that first 10 years like as things progressed, and then what was that second 10 like, and then what's it been the last 10? That'll make it easy for the folks to keep score at home. So, Chip, I'll let you start and do it to it.
Thank you, Greg, and we are certainly happy to be here and happy happy to share our story with you guys. So I grew up in Texas, and one sister, beautiful sister, and we had a great childhood. We had great parents. We went to church every Sunday. But from a very early age, I just felt like, the world didn't spin right for me. I was anxious, full of fear, had a lot of social anxiety. And when I got into, I guess I was 14 or 15, and my buddy Jeff, we were in his backyard, and we started drinking beer, and, after 4 or 5, that anxiety, that fear just melted away. And from that point on, it was just, every time I had an opportunity to change the way I felt, whether it was drugs or alcohol, I did that. And it took me to some dark spots. I graduated from high school, and after high school I ended up in rehab for 30 days, and then they sent me off to Atlanta. My parents did, to a sober living house with a bunch of guys for 3 months, and I got off, I got clean, I felt good. I got out and got my grades up. I had a .9 in junior college, not very good. But I was managed, I worked really hard, I raised that. I got into a 4-year college, and backing up a little bit, and Amber will probably tell you, but this little church that we went to, there's like 150 members, and the Buckaloos, which is her maiden name, sat back here, and the Andersons sat over here, but she was 5 years younger than me, so I didn't, it wasn't until later, we'll get into that, we connected.
Awesome. And then Amber, just a little bit about yourself. Yeah. There's a microphone.
You get your own.
There you go.
So I grew up an only child, also in Texas. And life was pretty boring at my house. I stayed at my friend Kathleen's house, who had 5 kids, big Catholic family. Life was more exciting over there. We were at Westminster with Chip's family because my mom's youth minister was the minister there. So it's a small Presbyterian church. And like Chip said, we knew of each other because you knew everyone in the church. We used to have a little lady, Millie, was her name, that wrote birthday cards to everybody in the church. That's how small it was. But our parents were on youth committees together. I think my mom and my sister Johnette have gone to Mo Ranch women's retreats. Our lives, our paths crossed. My mom actually taught my husband Sunday school. Said he would look out the window a lot. Maybe that's where the .9 came from. But no, so our paths have kind of crossed at an early age, but like he said, he was 5 years older, so we didn't meet or reunite until college.
And then were you aware, Amber, as you two met, fell in love, or headed towards this big wedding day, were you aware of the challenges that Chip had as you were, obviously you were, or did you think about any of that as you were preparing to spend your life with this man?
Yeah, I didn't really know. We fell in love pretty fast. I think we started dating in September. We told our family 3 months later we were going to get married, and they got married in 6 months later. But it wasn't until our first apartment, I think. I didn't know he dabbled in some drugs and had some past, and my mom always told me and my dad, if you do drugs, you're going to die. And I truly believed that. I was one of those kids that just said, okay. So when we were married and in our apartment, I remember thinking, well, why did you do that, and how did you stop, and what happened? And I was just asking a few questions that I had never asked when we dated. And he said, well, I went to rehab. And it was kind of a long, drawn-out thing. It was a lot more stuff than I knew about, which is fine. We just hadn't touched on it before marriage. So no, I wasn't aware of everything, I guess, until we got married.
And so, June 30th, 1995. I did my homework. That's when you got married. I was there. I was at the wedding. It was so long. I was so young. I was like the little ring bearer or something, right? I brought that down. And so tell the folks about the first decade. What was that like? I mean, you see one of your beautiful children, Avery's here, so obviously some kids came in. And, Jim, why don't you just start and tell us what that first decade was like, that first 10 years of marriage?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I graduated, got a good job with a big accounting firm, and got my CPA, and we got married, moved into a little apartment, and we had a lot of fun, and both sides of our family drank. It was just a normal thing, but I was still a daily drinker. Every day. I didn't drink at work, but every day I would look forward to getting off work and drinking. And I knew that I drank. I mean, I was told back in rehab, back in Atlanta when I was sober living, hey, you don't need to drink. But so I knew that, right? I knew I didn't drink like other people, but it was not ruining my life, and we had a lot of good times in our marriage, and we were really involved with the church. Amber actually worked for the church, and then back up a little bit, we had our beautiful children. We had Avery first, and Landon 2 years later, and so on the outside, things were good, but with me, I knew I was filling a hole that I should have been filling with God. I knew that, right? And I knew that I was chasing after, I was living this double life, and this distance from God. I had this distance from God, and I just remember being involved with the church and thinking to myself, I'd really like to help some of these, youth that are maybe struggling with drugs and alcohol, but I knew I was doing the same thing. I knew I was drinking like that, and I had nothing to offer them, so it was a challenge.
So, as that's going on, and you feel like you're leading like this double life, Amber, did you know? I mean, how did you feel? I mean, what role did alcohol play in your life and in your marriage as parents of young kids, and going to soccer games and still doing the church things and all of that? How were you navigating that as a wife and mom?
Well, at that time, I think in your life as a mom, you're so busy with littles, and I had a bunch of littles in the church I was taking care of as well. And so life was busy. It was fun. We loved our kids to death, and we had a great family. I felt like we had great family time. So I think at that point, because we were both raised with parents, I mean, alcohol was just always there at my house, and I drank. I still have a glass of wine from time to time. But I do remember being annoyed by people that would overdrink. So it wasn't really until a couple of times here and there, I was like, wow, he's really had a lot. I don't know why he needed to have that much, But I think at that point I was not really totally in tune to that yet.
Yeah.
It's a progressive disease, alcoholism for sure. And I think at that point our life was good, and we were both working, and our kids were having fun, and we were having fun, and it seemed okay at that point.
Great. And so that kind of takes you through the first 10 years, 8 to 10 years or so, and you're kind of moving along, doing your thing. This is what life has to offer. It's good. Beautiful kids. You got a house in McKinney. I mean, things are happening. You're doing things just like it's designed to be. And then it started, the train started getting off the tracks a little bit, and then it got off the tracks a lot. And so, Chip, if you don't mind, sharing with us sort of that progression that once it went, and what happened, and maybe take us all the way up until rock bottom, say, for both of you. And then when you're done, I'll go over here to see how that works. But tell us how that went down.
Yeah, and so like Amber talked about, it is a progressive, it's a progressive illness, alcoholism. And so when I turned 40, I ended up with this intestinal infection that almost killed me. I was in the hospital I was in ICU for 4 days and had to have a blood transfusion, almost died. In the hospital for 2 weeks, and that was the first time I'd been away from alcohol, drinking on a daily basis, and that was since I was, back in rehab, back in the sober living house. So, when I finally came out of ICU, I just remember the doctors would come around and say, "Hey, what level is your pain?" And I'd be like, "Well, it's a 10," and every 4 hours, they would come and they would give me morphine, and this happened for the entire 2-week period. And when I got out, I remember, if you're in the hospital for a couple of weeks, when you get out, you want like In-N-Out burger or something that you really enjoy. And Amber was like, "Well, where do you want to go? You've been in the hospital for 2 weeks." And I was like, "What about the beer store?" Normal people just don't do that. They don't almost die and go to the hospital. And so I think that really started to get Amber thinking, there's something, this is pretty serious. And then I was diagnosed with Crohn's when I was in the hospital, and so a year later I ended up in the hospital again. And that time when I got out, same thing, pain medication, but this time they sent me home with a bunch of it. And so the pain medication on top of the drinking escalated, got significantly worse, and I was just worthless, And it was really, it's all about me getting what I want, right? It's the selfishness of, it's all about me, right? And I was just ignoring, my family, And so Amber, understandably, came and said, "Look, you're either going to quit or you're going to move out." And so I was like, "Well, I don't want to move out." And so I started trying to get out. I started going to meetings and doing that. But I really wasn't ready to quit. The next 2 years, this October of 2010 through July of 2012, were just a complete nightmare. They really were. And I put my family through hell, basically. But, there's lots of stories during that 2-year period, so I'm not going to go into all of them. But I mean, some that are really, that'll give you an idea of the level of depravity with me was, there was one time that, and I had these periods of sobriety followed by a terrible, worse relapse where I would just disappear. But I remember one time we were working in the yard on a Saturday, and we were having a great day. It was a beautiful Texas day, and I was like, "Well, I'm going to take these branches to the dump," and which is only like 30 minutes away. And on the way, that just insanity took over, and I'm like headed to the liquor store, and I just remember her calling me and me just not picking up. Just disappeared, and I'm like just off the rails. By the time I got home, her whole family's in my driveway, and they've had the cops over looking for me. And the next day I got up and, I remember sleeping in the backyard on like a lawn chair back there. And I remember waking up when the sun came up, and our fence, right, I could see over the top of the fence. And I remember catching eyes with a jogger that was coming down the street for an early morning jog, and I'm laying in all my clothes on a lawn chair in the backyard, just thinking, what a piece of dirt I am, But the insanity of it is that I got up and I ended up getting a hotel somewhere. I had all these Hilton points, and I'm like, you know what? This is the selfishness of it. I'm like, well, the Mavericks are playing in the last game of the championship tonight. That's what I'm thinking. After all that, that's what I want to do. And so I get up on a fundless bar, and I'm just drinking, and I've been drinking all day, and I end up, I have this hotel room, and so my parents, who were in California, canceled their vacation and flew back to Texas, and my dad was sitting on the couch with Amber, and they were sitting there trying to find out where I was, because they had no idea. And granted, we're in Dallas, there's hundreds of Hilton hotels or affiliates around there, right? So I'm walking, and I got a 12-pack of beer, and I walk in to check in, and the phone rings, and the lady behind the desk answers it, and she goes, "Oh yeah, Mr. Anderson, well, he's right here, he's about to check in." I said, "Odd?" Yeah. Is it odd or is it God, right? So I end up upstairs, I lock myself in there. Long story short, the cops end up coming, and, you know, I'm taken away to a detox, and I'm there for a while, and then up in rehab again. And, you know, my family had this trip planned to Hawaii. You know, Dad goes to rehab, family goes to Hawaii. It's just crazy. But, you know, and I remember them getting back, and Avery and I were watching Rocky together on rehab, and Landon and I playing. I mean, it's just insane. I get out 2 weeks later, and I think, you know what, I think I found the answer. I think I found the answer. I'm feeling better. I've been doing recovery. I've been going to meetings. And 2 weeks later, I drink again. And shortly thereafter, I meet a man, right, who was a follower of Jesus and who had many, many years of sobriety. His name was Mike, right? And Mike had something that I wanted, right? Mike had peace. Mike had something.
So, before we get to Mike, there's a lot of folks out here wondering, what in the heck were you thinking, Amber?
At this point, I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about you think about the backyard and the, you know, hey, I'll be back in a minute, honey, and you're not back, and so that's the lies and all of that. So what is going through your mind and your heart at this time as you're sort of trying to catch everything?
So I was very clued in at this point, but I was so sad because I was like, we have this great life, we have 2 kids, I'm sure he could stop all this madness for us, right? But he couldn't, and, you know, there was a part of me that kicked in, like, I kind of pushed God aside and was just, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to have to find him when he'd go missing. Like I said, like he said, get on the iPad and figure out which Hilton might be within 10 to 15 minutes and find him. And I'd make up these long lies because I found out that one hotel he was at and went with his father, and I had to lie to the hotel to tell them that he had my keys because I couldn't get into his room. And so I made this long lie up with my father-in-law right there, and he was with me too. He was like, whatever we gotta do, let's do it. And, you know, and it just was madness. It was such madness. And I didn't understand how our life was fine and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And I was trying to take care of everything, and I was trying to think, well, I can fix him. I can take care of our marriage. I can take care of the kids. And even though I was exhausted and I was scared and knowing something's wrong, but I just, you know, the whole house is falling apart. So I can't do it.
And what kind of conversations were you having with the kids, or what, not 10 and 12-ish, or
I think they were pretty, I think Avery, she was out playing with friends. Landon was a little more in tune, and he was actually younger, but I feel like he would see me cry, so he would stay right by Mama and he'd hold on to me. He just kind of was there as my protector, almost like he knew he needed to be. I tried for the most part to shoo them over to my aunts or my mom and dad's when things would go really bad, so I could just figure out, where is he, what am I going to do now? So I tried to hide that. I was trying to just hide it from everybody, really, and fix it. I thought, oh, this is okay. You know, he's going to wake up, and he's for us. He's going to do it for us, is what I thought.
And at what point did you say, enough is enough, that's it, get out, we're finished, we're over? I know that happened at some point. Was there a
Yes.
specific action or something that occurred that made you just say, that's it?
Yes, so, what was that night, I think that you'd been missing a couple of times, and he came home, and I just said, tomorrow, I'm gonna take the kids to church, and I need you to go somewhere else. I know what it was first. First of all, the day before, the big thing was Avery had horseback riding lessons. And he took Landon, and it was out in the country. And when he came home, he went straight to the pool and jumped in. And I remember peeking through the blinds and looking at him, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's drunk. And he's been driving my kids around. And that's when I was like, that's it. That's it. Can't do it anymore. Gotta keep my kids safe now. So again, I need to take control and keep my kids safe. So I need you to leave. I need you to be gone tomorrow. Woke up the next morning, Sunday morning, and said, I'm taking the kids to church. I would like for you to not be here when we get back, because I just can't trust you right now. That was the big thing.
Chip, you were on the couch then? It was at the same day when you were on the couch when you talked. How was that morning for you?
Yeah, so I mean, that was we have a saying called alcoholic torture, right? And again, yeah, I mean, I drove around the kids drunk the day before, and waking up that morning, and I remember I was sleeping on the couch, and I remember I could smell her perfume, and she came out, she was taking the kids to church, and just watching her take our kids to church, I was just like, I can't even describe the feeling. But quickly thereafter, it was, I need a drink.
Yeah.
And that's the insanity of it.
Yeah, on Sundays in Texas, they don't sell beer till noon, so you had to wait around, right? Yeah. So you were done. That was it.
Went to church, and then
She wasn't done yet.
She wasn't done yet. So what made her done?
Well,
When was it over?
The same weekend.
Okay.
So I had left there, and I had gone to a restaurant. This is Sunday afternoon, and drank there for a few hours. Left that restaurant, ran a red light, totaled my truck, hit another car. I remember the cops walking out, and I was just like, well, I didn't know, this is just a fender bender. My truck was unrecognizable. And so, yeah, so then I ended up in jail.
but I found out from, I was home that evening, and I got a phone call from a Bell's bondsman. So I didn't get a call from Chip. And he said, and I was so confused, and they said, yeah, don't you want to bail your husband out of jail? And I was like, told him to leave. I didn't think, had no idea the accident had happened. I'd gone to church with the kids and come home that evening, and I just lost it. Like that's when I was like, yeah, this is it. He could have killed himself, the other person could have killed the kids the day before. So that was probably one of the hardest times in my life, I think, at that moment.
So they said get him out. Did you get him out?
No, I did not. I did not. They actually called me for days in to come get him out of jail. And I left him in jail for a week because I just needed to know that I was safe, he was safe, the kids were safe. And I can remember being with my father-in-law, and we had to go up to the jail to give him money so he could get a razor to shave. And partner, that's what we call our father-in-law, was like, do you want to put a little money on there for a Diet Dr. Pepper? That was his favorite, soda. And I was like, are you kidding? I'm not giving him a Diet Dr. Pepper. He's like, he's getting a razor, It was just kind of funny because partner and I were kind of partners in crime, figuring out. But at that moment, that's his son. I'm sure he was feeling all the feelings I was and more, just because that's his child.
So you're in jail, nobody's helping you, you're helpless, hopeless, and at the bottom. Tell us what God started to do in you and in you to get this journey back.
Yeah, so I mean, I was completely surrendered. You know, I was sitting in a jail cell, and I just said I'm willing to do whatever it takes. You know, I just remember flipping through. There was a Bible in there, and I just remember going to Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. And reading it over and over. And just said I'm willing to do whatever. But I knew at this point that my job was probably gone because we'd hid it from them up until this point. But now, you know, she's like, my boss called, and Amber's like, yeah, he's in jail. She didn't want to, no more excuses, no more covering, he's in jail. So I, you know, and I thought my family was gone. I was just complete, I was broken, you know, I was broken. And it was at that point that, yeah, it was tough. And so I got out 7 days later, called Mike, and said, whatever I need to do, I'll do. And I did exactly what that man told me. He said, you know what, we take a meeting to a jail, it's about an hour from here. You know, you're just going to go and be a bad example and don't talk unless I tell you to talk, and you're just going to go. You know, and so I did, you know, and I worked through the steps with him, you know, and what I found is that I had a hole in me that God had to fill, right? God had to fill it, and it was, you know, it was all about self. It was all about me. It was all about everything was about me, and I learned that I needed to give it over to God, turn it over to God, and start serving others. You know. Start reaching out, start giving away whatever was so freely given to me, and just so going through that process. And one of the things that Mike did really pushed me towards that to service. And I remember there was a real defining moment for me. I remember being back in my office, and I got a demotion, and I was sitting in the office thinking how much damage I had done to this company for the past 2 years, being drunk, and I thought I was going to get fired. I thought she had already told me she wanted a divorce. And all this stuff, and I was telling Mike about it. And Mike was like, well, what floor are you on? I said, I'm on the 7th floor. He said, well, you could jump, right? Or you could remember that a week ago, you decided to turn your will and your life over to the care of God, to utterly turn your life over to the care of God. So I suggest you go find a bathroom stall or an empty conference room, and you hit your knees and you pray. And that was a defining moment for me, when I realized that I needed to get smaller and God needed to get bigger, you know. And how do I do that? I did that by seeking God and serving others. And the other thing I'll tell you is he said, look, because I was living in a sober living house, and I was having to take care of our house, and I was just terrified that she was never going to take me back. And Mike would just say, you know what, just go and be of service and smile. And
when you would go to her, when you would go to your house.
When I'd go to my house, yeah. When I'd help the kids with their homework. And one time we went over there, the kids wanted to eat meat. It's like, can Dad eat with us? So we ordered food, and Amber got physically ill eating in my presence.
Yeah.
She had to get up and leave the table because I disgusted her, and understandably so. But I kept showing up. You know, I just kept coming back and showing up.
So it's one thing to, that's incredible. I love the story about 7th floor. You got 2 choices.
Yeah.
That's it. So it's one thing to be changed and on demand. It's another thing to accept it, and forgive, and let go. And so what were you feeling? So here's Chip coming over, trying to shut his pie hole and just serve. And you just want to hit him in the head with a rolling pin. What changed your heart, and how long did it take before you could be receptive to change, that something was going on, and how did that occur inside of you?
Well, during that whole time, I pretty much knew we're divorcing. And I think right before that, I too it's kind of funny how we were reading the Psalms in the jail room. I was reading the Psalms. And I remember a specific moment just crying out to God and saying, I cannot do this anymore. I can't be you. I can't change him. I can't do everything. I'm giving my husband to you. But I know that you're going to have to take care of him, but I've got to take care of these kids and do this divorce thing. So that's kind of where I was at. I finally had a moment of peace as far as in just a feeling of, wow, that's off my shoulders, of lightness, because I had taken it so much. So that was one defining moment, was just letting God take care of Chip, because I couldn't do it. And realizing that he's not mine, he's his. And then when he did come to the house, he just kept coming over. He kept saying, I'm not going to tell you I'm sorry. I'm just going to do what I need to do. And I remember thinking, that's so weird, because all he did was tell me for the past year, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I heard it so much, and then I realized, oh, okay. So I don't think it was probably been a couple weeks, would you say? And then my family knew I was divorcing. The family was involved heavily. And then one day, I remember telling my friend Ann, and it had to be God. There's no one else it could have been, because my family calls me a grudge holder, and I do tend to be a grudge holder. But I just remember thinking, oh my goodness, I don't think I could do this divorce thing. I just remember having this feeling that I needed to forgive him. And he had obviously at this point had shown me a lot, because I don't remember the timing and all that. I know it was quick, but in my mind, he'd been over to the house a ton of times. I had a Christian counselor, thank the Lord, that was just feeding me full of scripture. And he was accepting of what I was wanting to do, but then it's just like it flipped. I did just a 180, and I thought, I need to forgive him. And that's not my normal personality. Like I said, I stewed for a while.
What kind of conversations were going on with your kids as this trauma unfolded, with Dad being gone, and then all of a sudden Dad's back, and hope, no hope? Are they even getting them, just not knowing? How was it from both of you? Because it had to be hell for you coming back. It had to be hell for you trying to explain it all. So, Amber, just tell us, as you were like seeing the light, how did you sort of talk to your kids about this is what's going on?
I didn't say a ton. I mean, I'm sure they heard things when they were at home and I get a phone call from the jail sponsor or whatever, but for the most part, I think in my head I knew that I was still their dad and they were kids. They were little. So I think I mainly described it as, Dad's just sick. He's really sick, and he has a problem with alcohol, and right now he's living away because we need to be safe, and he needs to be safe, and we need to be safe. I just tried to put it in small kid terms, because I didn't know, obviously you're not going to explain all of the details to littles, but so that was really it. And I think I went to my pastor at the time, and he said, I just want you to know, Amber, through all of this, your kids are looking at you to see what you're doing. And that was something that we had talked about just the other day that Chip had reminded me, because I told him that. And I do remember giving my kids to my parents a lot so that I could just scream and yell or cry or whatever and get all my emotions out. But I think they just fed off of how I was. Like when Dad came back and I was forgiven, Avery she's always a quick forgiver. She's our little, she forgave like that. And I say she forgave before I did, really, because she was writing notes to him in rehab and jail. And she did forgive before me. But Landon took a little bit longer. But he was always looking, he was looking at you, looking at me, making sure, is this right? Is this, the wheels were turning, but he did come around, for sure. It just took him a little bit longer.
So when did you know, okay, Chip, I got a shot. If this could happen, right? And take us now in this sort of last decade from all of that. And thank you for sharing that, by the way. And how did God bridge that gap? What kind of conversations did you have with your kids? Got to California. Tell us.
Well, one thing I can say is that it was a miraculous thing from God, because, I mean, once we decided to reconcile, and I give God obviously credit, but Amber too, Amber she never brought up the past. She never held anything against me.
That's God.
That's all God there. Because she had a lot to hold against me if she wanted to, you know? And so, you know, we just started, I started learning with God getting bigger and me getting smaller, how to be a husband, right? How to be a father, how to be an employee, you know, and us starting to build some discipline in our lives, you know, some discipline that we have to this day. You know, we get up in the morning, I get our coffee, my coffee, we get in bed, we do our quiet time, we pray together. You know, those were disciplines we didn't have before. That are huge now. I can't imagine not having that now, you know. And so through those years, I mean, some things happened, you know, and I lost that job that I had. I lost that job, you know, and but you know, we got through it. We slept at night, you know. We prayed together. We came together. You know, I put my own shingle up and worked on my own for a while. And when I thought everything was going to run out and we were just going to hit the street, and I get a call from this guy going, hey, I've got this thing going on. I want you to help me look at it in California. And at first it was just look at it and help him look at it. And we kind of looked at it together. And he called back a week later and said, well, why don't you just move to California and do this thing together? And that was all God, you know, because my options at that time were kind of running out, you know, and it's been amazing. So we loaded up and headed west like the Beverly Hillbillies with the U-Haul and the dog and the kids, and yeah. And so, but I mean, God was in the middle of all of it, and then getting here and watching our kids grow up, right? And you know, a big part of it is Grace Bible. You know, it's becoming a part of Grace Bible, and just a great, incredible, I just can't even begin to, how wonderful that's been, and part of our church family, and Jason and Andrea, and I mean, it's just been awesome. I mean, and being involved in, you know, I guess one more thing I want to say is important is, it's important for us and for me that I have got to be plugging myself and doing things. I've got to be involved with men's Bible study on Thursday morning. I've got to be going to church. I do something on Tuesday with some guys, and I got to continue to seek God because you know, unfortunately, I live with myself and I'm my own problems, right? I'm the more focused I am on myself, that's where all my problems come from, is when I'm focused on self. And so, again, God's got to get bigger and I got to get smaller, and we get to do it together.
And I got a coffee boy out of the whole thing. He truly does bring me coffee in bed every morning and makes the bed now. That was one of the things that he
Well-trained.
did. He's a treasure. I'm taking that from our sermon today because he is a treasure.
Well,
It truly is.
Chip
Not just because it's a coffee boy.
Chip said something pretty profound. When God gets bigger and I get smaller, I become a better husband, better employee, better friend. And man, that's true. Amber, your kids now, they're young adults doing their own thing. How has going through this, coming out on the other side, seeing God in real life, seeing Him in action, being honest with them,
How do you think that has shaped your kids for what they're facing right now as young adults in this crazy world?
I guess since I'll speak for them. I used to think, why did this happen? And I wish I could just shove it under the rug and nobody know about our little family secret. Although my husband Chip was opposite. He was doing the thing, serving, telling everybody, and I was like, okay, this is how it's going to be. And I'm so grateful for that. We've always been a very open family and able to talk about whatever, but it's funny now, you know, the kids will come in and say, hey, Dad, when you were on meth a long time ago, or when you were drinking with their friends, like this is conversation in our house. I want to know about this. And these kids are just like mesmerized. And so I think it's made them more cognizant of how drugs, alcohol, bad substances can change you for the worse. And thankfully, they saw the bad, but thankfully, thank the Lord, they saw a redemption. There's a story of redemption and forgiveness and love. And we've always, I mean, Chip he is a treasure. And that's what was so hard in all this. He was this perfect husband. And I was like, how is this taking over our life? And so to be able to be on the other side of that and to share and be open to our family and to anyone really, I think it's just made them more aware and comfortable maybe a little bit, and knowing that, yeah, that could happen if we do that, you know. So
Is there anything else before we put a bow on this? Is there anything else that you want to add? Go to you and then we'll wrap it up.
just so grateful, I think. Like I said, I never in a million years was thinking I would ever get back with him. There was so much damage, and God, I'm so grateful that God just took that away and erased it. And completely, you know, I think it was me releasing him too. Just, I couldn't do it. And I think just knowing that God, praying for him and knowing that God did, you know, he listened, and I guess we both did a little bit, but it was all him for sure. It was all God.
Yeah, and I would just say that, I mean, no matter how dark it gets or how dark you think it is, it's never been too big for God.
No.
Never too big for God. And just the fact that we, I think having God at the center of our relationship has been the biggest thing for us. Yeah.
Well, God is doing a mighty, incredible work in you individually and you as a couple and in your family. We have seen lives changed. Guys and gals, I can't tell you how many times I have witnessed personally, heard personally, how their story has made an impact. And it's because of the work of Jesus Christ within them. There is no other answer. The one that came not to condemn, but to save. And these folks are living proof of God in real life. So would you join me and thank them for sharing?